Hi, everybody. It's Friday, January 17th. We're going to be going over our market update. We've got Matt Stancato here from Guild Mortgage Lending. He's going to be talking to us about interest rates, some projections, where we think things are going and why. More importantly, last week, Matt, you said that we were at a temporary high or that we were kind of peaking in the interest market. And I'm just kind of curious as why you feel that way or why you think that is. And do you think things are going to come down? Where are we at?
Yeah, so the Fed is the primary controller of the interest rate environment in the United States. They don't control the rates directly, but they do decide whether or not we're talking about rates up here, we're talking about rates down here. So the mandate of the Fed is twofold. They need to make sure inflation doesn't get too high. They need to make sure that unemployment doesn't get too low. So when you're trying to control inflation, what you want to do is make sure there's not so much money out there floating around. The definition of inflation is too much money chasing too little product. So when there's too much money out on the street, everything's going to be more expensive. And that makes sense if you think about a supply and demand standpoint, right? So if there's plenty of money and everybody wants everything, well, the price of everything is going to go up. And that makes sense. So the other side of that is unemployment, because if you start to control for inflation and you start to put less money on the street, well, that has side effects. And one of those side effects is that businesses have less money to hire, to expand, to, in general, to do business. So the Fed has this very tough job of making sure that we don't have so much money in the economy that it runs so hot that we get inflation, and that we don't have so little money in the economy that the economy itself can't grow and people can't get jobs. So the Fed seeks to strike that balance. Right now, indications are, for the most part, that we are in a too restrictive rate environment, which means rates should go down. The reason that people think we're in too restrictive rate environment has to do with some economic data that has come out regarding inflation and some economic data that has come out regarding the CPI, as I think you and I were talking about before the camera went on, and also talking about inflation numbers and job openings numbers. So there's a lot to dive into, but the totality of that leads me to think that as we get better and better information and longer information over a longer and longer period of time about how the economy is doing, we're going to get more information that the economy isn't quite as stable as has been presented in the last 18 months or so. We're going to get some bad news, I think, that follows. And when that happens, that's an indicator to the Fed that they can go ahead and make those cuts.
So how do you think that, when measuring the CPI for December, it looks like it rose 0.4% from November. It would indicate that inflation has gone up ever so slightly. How do you think that's going to affect the meeting for the Fed come, let's say, January 20th, 29th? Do you think there'll be any cuts, or do you think they're going to hold steady with interest rates?
The most dovish member of the Fed has come out and said 4 cuts next year, a quarter apiece. The most hawkish member of the Fed, who is the Cleveland Fed president, has come out and said that we may need to stop cutting right now. In the main, they have this cool dot plot that they do of where the Fed members think that the rates are going to be in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. There are some folks who seem to think that we do not have inflation under control, and they point to information like the information that you're talking about.
Sure.
But the majority of the Fed and the majority of Guild's secondary market analysis department believes that we are much more likely to continue to see cooling inflation over the long term. If you measure month over month, yes, we went up, but that indicates a stochastic variation. And as we were talking about last week, stochastic means random, but in a direction. So right now, rates are poised to go down. There might be a slight bump up or a slight bump down before that happens. And that is sort of noise in the signal, right? So what we're trying to do is separate signal from noise.
Gotcha. No, that's definitely helpful. So for somebody who is, looking at interest rates, looking at the home buying market, what is your advice to them right now to combat these higher interest rates before they come down?
Unfortunately, there's very little to do as far as combating the rate itself. The rate environment is what it is. You can go to me, you can go to the street, you can go to somebody online, and we're all looking at the same pool of money. What you can take advantage of, however, is that uniquely in the United States of America, you can refinance as many times as is beneficial to you. So, and what that is completely up to you, of course. For example, in the UK, You can't do that. In the UK, you get your mortgage for 5 years at whatever the going rate is. At the end of 5 years, you renegotiate to whatever the Bank of England says that the going rate for a mortgage is. You don't have any control over that, and you don't have the ability to lock it in for longer than 5 years at a time. In the United States, our market says that every time you think it's worth it to you, you can refi. If it's worth it to you for half a point because you have a large loan amount, you can do that. If it's worth it to you to wait for a point, most people use that as their stepping stone to when they want to refinance in the future. But the short answer to the question is, if you want to buy a house, buy the house. You can always improve or fix your financing later. And there are ways to do that such that you'll barely feel the pinch of the needle. So it's not as cost prohibitive as a lot of people think to do a refinance down the road and improve that rate. So if there's a house that you want to buy and an opportunity that you have, you should probably never wait for a particular rate environment. You can always grab it later.
Great. And then going back to, as we were talking about just the environment as a whole, where things are going, talk to me more about that.
Yeah, there's a couple things going on right now, particularly with the wildfires in California.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Yeah, we jumped in with GoFundMe for our company. I know you guys have as well, and it's a horrible situation. But there's also a practical effect to that situation, and that is there's a lot of shipping in California. There's a lot of shipping that's going to be impacted. There's a lot of jobs in California that are going to be impacted. It's going to be very expensive, and we're going to have to create a favorable business environment in order for that rebuild to function the way that the new administration is going to want that rebuild to function. So all that to say that what's happening in California is going to slow our economy. And the Fed members are already looking at that. Anything that serves to slow our economy now or in the future also serves to make a rate reduction more likely.
I was just going to say, if you thought that would be a good indicator for the rate reduction, considering up until this point, there has been many people suggesting, right, that the Fed wouldn't be making maybe a rate cut this first quarter, maybe not for 6 months. I'm curious to see if, knowing what's going on in California, if it would encourage them to take a rate cut earlier than they had anticipated.
Remember that the Fed always looks at numbers in arrears, right? So they're always looking at last month or the last 60 days, and they're making decisions based on that. So yes, as soon as the incredible devastating effect of these wildfires is felt, I think that's going to be a blow to the economy that will be more than sufficient to encourage the Fed to go ahead and make another cut and spur the economy that way. We're running into a conflagration. What's a terrible word to use? But we're running into a confluence of events right now that are serving to create an environment that's more likely than not to result in rate reductions. We think the first one is going to come probably at the meeting in March. And after that, there may be one more, there may be three more, but no one thought there was going to be another cut until the second half of last year. And that's been the general vibe since late October or so. So the fact that there is now chatter about another cut in March indicates that they are more likely than they were 2 weeks ago, let's say, to impose additional cuts.
Well, that, depending on where you are, that's a good sign for a lot of people who are anxiously waiting for some rate cuts right now. So.
And there's something else to think about as well. I am as diehard an Eagles fan as you will find anywhere. But there is a spring market. And the funny part is, do you know when the spring market starts?
After the Super Bowl?
Not only after the Super Bowl, but after your team's out of the playoffs. We had some great information at Guild this year where there was something like a 25 or 30% increase in applications and new contracts after each team is eliminated in order. So let's say you have Chicago beats Detroit, but then next week Detroit loses. I'm pulling names out of the air. Chicago will have 2-week jump on Detroit as far as contracts and as far as their spring market heating up. So I hope the Eagles last for as long as possible. But that being said, let's hope
they're going to the Super Bowl, guys. Come on now, they're gonna win.
That's what I
got Barkley. It's all gonna be okay. I was going to ask how Guild is going to take advantage of the rate cuts or the changes in the market. Yeah.
One of the reasons I love Guild is that we hold and service more than 95% of our mortgages. Now, that's great because it provides the customer with a really good experience, but it's even better because it provides us with income during slow periods. So
Mhm.
Guild is able to continue. Guild's able to continue to subsidize, lower rates through slow periods, and then we have the capital when good periods are on the horizon to be able to invest in that. And one of the things that Guild's committing to do is taking some of the servicing money that we've gained over the past couple of years and using that to subsidize lower rates in the spring market. So we believe in the spring market. We think it's going to go great guns, and we're trying to buy into as big a market share as possible. So Guild is going to do our best to offer, rate subsidies down to the bone in order to get folks into homes.
That's awesome. So glad to hear it. Well, if you're in the PA area, Chester County, Berks, or Montgomery, and you're looking for a loan officer to help you get a pre-approval, Matt is here, and I'll be happy to link his information, his contact, email, phone number if you need it. And of course, I'm here too to help you navigate the market as things change, and keep you up to date each Friday. Matt, thank you so much for your time, and I hope everyone has a great weekend.
Happy to answer questions anytime. Really appreciate you having me on.